Well, everybody, thank you very much for joining. Yes, it's yep, it's the centenary, a half centenary of the forum. I've been going now since April of 2020, so it's not been doing badly, really. Seems to be shaping up. I'm glad that you can all join me every so often just to see what's going in the world and everything. And what is going on in the world? Anybody got any news that's where things are, Andy? How is the supply market these days?
Oh, it's marvelous. Everything is wonderful. Let's just leave it there at the moment. Yeah, yeah, it's wonderful, isn't it, Simon?
Absolutely, Andrew. Yeah, yeah. It'll be even better in about 6 weeks' time, won't it?
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. What happens in 6 weeks then, Simon?
I don't know, but we're not on there, are we?
No.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Alan, explain me something, because this morning I've seen a news article saying that unemployment is going up, and yet every time you look at the industry, it's missing millions of people. Have you any idea what that is?
I can't fathom it out for the life of me. We were told a couple of weeks ago, I think it was the lowest unemployment we've had in almost 50 years, another milestone. And yet the unemployment market was just people just taking themselves out of the industry, I think. I still notice that people are not wanting to come back to do the hours they were doing before. The lifestyle balance mentality certainly seems to be different. I don't know yet whether all the hoteliers have woken up to the fact that they're going to have to change what they're doing and how they do it in order to get people to stay and build a career again. I think we're at the situation now where there's lots of jobs available, but people aren't looking at it as a career opportunity. And I think we're almost going down that American model where people start doing waiting jobs or bar jobs or, you know, cleaning as a means to an end to do something else. And that's quite disappointing. After a lifetime in the industry, I'm finding it quite sad to witness that. But I still think we're going to be in this sort of muddle until probably next spring. And I think then people will have to make a decision on what they do going forward in terms of how they can actively retain and get back to the days of having apprenticeships or graduate schemes, because we are going to be missing a middle generation of management that disappeared almost 2 years ago and hasn't really come back to the level that it was at before. So yeah, it's quite disappointing, and I don't know where that leaves the industry. Still battling, I think, to get things done and to get through Christmas. It's a matter of coping rather than managing at the moment, I think, sadly.
But hasn't that whole image of people working in the industry always been there? Because I know compared with the continent, it's always been that sort of bad image, as opposed to it being a profession and everything, and how being almost looked up to as you sort of some of these people in sort of like people who work in the continent.
Oh yes, almost... I think that's always had that poor relation thing, I think. And if I look at the continent today, I still see the number of senior hotel executives, managers, general managers are quite mature ladies and gentlemen. But I think here in the UK, if you get past that magic 55 and you're still in a job, you're sort of doing well. And I think there's a lot of people being passed over for the cheaper option, dare I say, those that will hold the keys and work the 70, 80 hours without complaining. And I spoke to one hotelier, it was literally about 3 or 4 weeks ago, who shall be nameless, who said, well, if that one doesn't work out, he burns out, I'll just go and get another one. And I thought, that's not really the way forward. And you know, luckily when you're self-employed, you can choose who you work with and who you don't work with, but there's quite a few I would look at with raised eyebrows as to their sort of ethical method of looking after staff or associates or even senior management. There's a lot of people who for that reason are not coming back to the industry and are going to stay. You know, a lot of hotel managers have gone into private medical practice, looking after hospitals and hospices and care homes. And equally, I've got 3 or 4 here who went to work with Aldi and Morrison's. And as they say, you know, I'm home by 9 o'clock in the evening. I can watch TV with the wife. I don't have to worry about, you know, I work 1 weekend in 3. There's that sort of freedom of stress, I think, which they get in those sort of industries that you didn't get in the hotel world.
Yeah.
You were almost afraid not to be there. And I'm still hearing tales about people being expected to be there to clear breakfast tables and be there at lunch and be a presence. Well, there's a fine line between managing and coping, I think. And there's sort of the fear of not being there, having to keep your job. I think that is wrong, and that's still there in the industry, I think.
But Alan, is that due to the fact that there aren't enough staff on those shifts, and does it therefore come down to the rate of pay for those entry-level positions? Because I'm sure you've all seen that hand-picked hotels, £3 an hour on everybody's wages. Pret a Manger have just done the second in-year pay review 2 years running, so they've had 4 pay rises in 2 years, and
yes,
the barista is now earning £13.50 an hour.
Yeah.
So I'm sure that if we pay correctly, then people will come along, and then that takes the pressure off everybody else, and then you can start to enjoy it a bit more.
Absolutely, yeah. No, I have to agree, and I think that first was noticeable after the recession in 2008, when a lot of mainstream UK hotel companies started making layoffs. The operational staff were let go, the middle management between department heads and GM, deputies and operations managers just disappeared, and half of them never came back. And I think then it was just a question of, well, they seem to be doing all right, they're coping at the moment, we'll leave it as it is, and we're saving ourselves 60-70 grand a year. And that mentality seems to be still there, unfortunately. And I think we're seeing
coping at the moment,
coping rather than managing, just getting through the in some cases getting through the season, or getting through the shifts, or getting through Christmas will cope. And if we can employ someone who can carry 1 plate and 1 cup, well, that's your standard, that you're going to set that out. And we don't have any corrective onboarding training. I remember back in the old days, graduate programs or development training programs was always a big feature in people like Forte and Grand Met. We don't see so many of those today. Hand-picked hotels being the exception, they seem to want to look after their staff. But 1 or 2 others, unfortunately, they just assume there's going to be a lot of people out of work, and they can burn and churn and just replace. And unfortunately, that doesn't give you any stability or any strategy going forward in terms of maintaining a new team, or a management team, or a staff associate team. It's very hard to watch, and it's very hard to see.
I think it's difficult because obviously there is a massive issue with staffing in the industry, and as Simon says, some employers have been able to increase the amount they pay staff, but with the other highly publicised issues within the energy costs that businesses are paying, the increase in costs, certainly for food, for that side of things, it's because all the pressures are coming at the same time. So it's very difficult to suddenly say, I'm going to pay my staff £3 an hour more when there isn't £3 an hour in the till to pay them.
Yes, no, I can accept that. I think that part of the damage has also been caused by mainstream media and social media, where perhaps the alarm bells are ringing to the point where we've all been here before. I remember my first mortgage was 15.5%, and I try and tell my kids that today, and they look at me in absolute horror. I ran a 4 Capri. I was earning 9.5 grand a year, but I still coped. I still went out on Friday nights or Saturday nights. It's how you perceive the advanced threat, and I think today the media is not helping us. But if you walk down any high street and pass any coffee shop or eatery or restaurant or bar or hotels, every single one will have a sign in the door: hiring, we're recruiting, staff wanted. And people just don't seem to want to work the shift patterns or the hours, or getting up too early, coming home after 9 o'clock. That has been a legacy more so since COVID than I think that I've ever seen at any other time. So I don't know what needs to be done to make that more attractive to people, other than a salary and a career path.
Yeah, I think it needs to be there needs to be an ethos within every business that everyone is valued, and that people feel that within the business. My daughter's just got a student job in Norwich at a lovely independent cafe that every time they're on shift, they made sure they're given a full meal.
Nice.
The tips are split at the end of every session, and they all get a fair share of it. and she feels like she's making, she's actually enjoying it, and they're all a team together, and I think that's a lot to do with it as well. There needs to be a lot more sort of empathy with the staff that you've got.
And I think you've got someone there who obviously enjoys working with people, but the number of people I see in the industry who clearly don't like working with people, and I have to question why you're in it. They do seem to think that the customer is an interruption to their day's work. And you still go to a reception desk or a cafe and someone's busy on the phone, or they're looking down at the floor, or they're counting money. There's never that interaction that you used to see. And I'm not saying we get to the American stage of, hi, how are you? I'm Hank, I'm going to be your server today. But there is a fine line between ignoring people and thinking, oh, there's another one in there, I've got to finish this crossword, or I've got to do my whatever it is. And I see that even in coffee shops now. It's quite difficult to sort of, you can't teach, I don't think, customer awareness to the point where you're making it sound plastic. But yeah, it is a shame that I think if staff are looked after and valued, that does come across towards how they react to customers and helping people. And once you get dialogue going with customers and clients, the whole thing is then sealed and is a good deal. But when it's early, or it's not, or they're working too long hours, or they're not being looked after, and it's a job, it's got to pay a bill to pay the inflated grocery prices or the electricity bill, then that becomes a big challenge as well.
And that's if
it's not all doom and gloom,
that's if they want to do the hours, because now if they work over 24 hours, they don't get their benefits and all the rest of it. That seems to be the key one at the moment, is that no, I can't do more than that many hours, because then I won't get my benefits. And
most people seem to want 20 hours or 4-day 5-hour shifts, and any more than that becomes a problem. But if you ask someone to stay on for a little bit, then that's where the challenge becomes.
But I think we need to be open to accepting of those people as well, because I know a number of mothers who are at entry-level jobs, and they would be fantastic if they could start work at 9:15 and finish work at 2:45. They're absolute gold, or even just do a lunch shift. But if you have to take your kids to school, pick them up, and you're on benefits, which there's a cap, then you even, no matter how much you want to work, you can't do those entry-level jobs. Now I'm in a privileged position. I can work from anywhere, 20 years of experience. But for a lot of literally the mothers that I see on the school run, they cannot afford to pay somebody to look after their children, for example. So they have to take the children to school. They have to pick them up. They can only work within certain hours. So if somebody asks them to stay on longer at Primark up the road, they have a hard stop. They have to walk out. And the gardens, one lady got virtually sacked from the garden centre. And this is like Duke of Northumberland sort of owned, should be doing better garden centre, because she has a hard stop. There is no option, and there's only so often you can send an emergency mummy call to say, pick us up. So I think that there are people who want to work where the industry would be a great industry for them to be in, but it's too hard to have that flexibility. And it's too much, shuffling around of other people. Who wants to do a split shift now as well, where you've got 3 hours in the middle of the day where you're an hour from home? So I think it's not everybody who's not limited to those hours. Sorry, I just felt that I had to defend those. So, not everybody who's limited to those hours is doing it well. So it really, really well is the Good Hotel in London. The Headland as well in Cornwall, they've spoken a lot, but the Good Hotel in London, I did meet the same guy at breakfast as I met serving drinks, but in between he'd been at university. He's a university student. Literally he served us coffee in the morning and served us beers in the evening, but in between, because we were joking and saying, oh, do you live here? And he was like, well, no, my university's here, blah blah blah. And the hotel makes it work. So there you go. That's my impression. Sorry about that.
No, you're absolutely right. To that point,
And I think there's something that we can all do to help, you know, if we are helping students or helping people sort out their LinkedIn profile, helping people with references, even if it's not a business reference. I've been able to give a reference for people that I know that are, you know, guy that served me in the bread shop. He's just graduated and he's always been fantastic service in the bread shop. And he just thought that was a job that's, you know, he didn't value that job for future references.
And those people that you talk about, Kat, they would make fantastic employees in hospitality, wouldn't they? Because they've got some maturity. Goodness sake, if you know how to handle a couple of little children, you can run a shift. And so yeah, they should be absolutely embraced.
Perhaps hotels need to club together and organise a child run for first thing in the morning, so they pick up all the kids while the mothers go to work.
So this is and I think every hospitality business should be embedded in the community that it sits in. So we have 2 cafes by the station in Isleworth. One of them is embedded in the community it lives in. The other one tried to poach staff from the first one up and wrote malicious reviews. Now, I know nothing about either of those before ever going into them, but one is embedded, one is not. One does free cappuccinos, not cappuccinos, sorry, baby chinos. I mean, what does it cost for a little shot of warm milk? Do you know what? But it means that the mummies on the drop off, because nursery drops off at one time, and the other, like basically just being embedded in the where you are, just thinking, oh, I'm beside a school. All of these people coming out, and they've got half an hour between drop offs. If I can offer, you know, tea and a baby chino for £1.50 or whatever, that's a service, but and gets us out of the rain today. But it also then embeds those people in the local community, and then ladies who I won't name get jobs working in the cafe, limited out. You know, I think it's being embedded in the community that you're in, starting local and working your way out.
The families come back after school as well, Kat.
Absolutely.
Or maybe they even have the birthday party there.
Exactly.
Who knows?
Yeah. Anyway, there you go. I'm gonna mute yourself.
Yep. Right. Well, moving on. We've got Rob here today to talk to us about the subject which nobody really wants to look at, but then suddenly they get a fine or something and they've got a problem. That was the way I always look at it, really. So handing over to you, to Rob, and let's hear a bit about data.
Thanks, Robin. Thank you. Good morning, everybody. Yes, the dreaded 4-letter word, which is GDPR, which I won't be using today because to me it's a 4-letter word, as well as compliance. So those two words, if I utter them today, I do apologise. It's always by mistake. I'm going to share my screen. I hope I've got a very short slideshow to go through with a couple of points. But what I'd really like to do at the end of the slideshow is actually hear from all of you on your interpretation of data protection, what you think when you come across data, how you handle data, because you're all working with hotels and in hotels. So I'm going to share my screen, Robin, and see what happens when I start this.
There we go.
Hang on a minute. Okay. Can you see that okay?
Yep.
Right. Okay. Excellent. Good. Thank you, Robin, for having me on, and thank you everybody for coming along. I know some of you, I connected to a lot of you on LinkedIn, but not had the opportunity to talk or you know, have any conversations with you yet. But I'm going to do a quick presentation on company Hotel DPO, and what we do is data protection within hospitality and hospitality vendors. As I say, my name is Rob Westwood, and my business partner Alan at the moment, who normally does this with me, is on a train heading to London to a technology show. So I'm going to be talking on behalf of his speciality, which is the regulations, and then we'll move on to my side of the business, which is the technology. So what we do is we provide data protection and privacy management systems and support and training, especially within hospitality and hospitality vendors. I've been working in hospitality since 1983, so I'm celebrating 40 years now in hospitality technology, and I spent 30 years working for a hospitality technology company, interfacing all the back office computers together so that they could exchange all this data long before data protection was even thought about. So this is something that's come about, you know, over the last few years. Alan and I got together in 2019, just before the pandemic, and we both, Alan's background is, he used to be a hotel manager. He was data protection officer for the NHS in Scotland and the church in Scotland. So he is my sounding board for everything that is legal and within the regulations, and my side, let's say, is technology. So we both come from a hospitality background, mine in the technology interfacing, Alan in the management and data protection services. So what's happened? We're looking forward, not looking back, looking forward to data protection in 2023. As we know, that four-letter word was introduced in May 2018, and a lot has happened since 2018. Now, the UK is not part of the EU, so our data protection regulations have changed, and what was happening or what did work in 2018 will now not work in 2023. And a lot of people, a lot of hotels and consumers see the data protection regulations as being something which limits what they can do with data, limits what they can use. But we try and look at it from the other side, whereas we try and enable hotels and companies to use that data, but use it in the right way and use it so that it can be used for sales and marketing and really unlock the data that every hotel holds within their technology. We'll come on to what the hotel stack. It's a common phrase that people use, hotel stack. I prefer to use the phrase as a hotel, it's a technology iceberg. And I'll have a demonstration about that in a few minutes of why it looks like an iceberg. But the technology is where all this data sits, and what we need to do is unlock it. The immediate threat, this is what people perceive to a hacker to look like. Several hotel groups have suffered cyber attacks, you know, the big ones, Marriott, Hilton, IHG, the Ritz Hotel in London, to name a few. IHG recently, within the last 6 months, suffered a cyber attack where their guest information was compromised. And what happens? They shut everything down for a week. What happens is the guests can't make any more reservations. There's confusion. They can't reach out to all of their guests within time. So everything just shuts down and nothing happens for, you know, for several days, and nobody knows. And then what happens afterwards is a group has now got all of this information, and then the guests feel next 6 to 12 months what's happening to their data. But in the modern world, this is not what a cyber criminal looks like. You know, on the previous slide, that's everybody's interpretation of what a cyber criminal would look like, but in reality, it can be any guest, it can be anybody wandering through the lobby, or it can be somebody the other side of the world just sitting at a computer hacking into data. So what are the consumer expectations about data protection? And this is from our own experience and our own studies, is that the top thing that guests and consumers want is they want to trust companies with their data. They want to know when they're booking a hotel, when they're booking a room, that they can trust the guests, the guests can trust the hotels with their information, with their data. There's something called data minimization. So hotels should only take the information that they need to deliver the contract for the guest to check in, use the room, and check out again. So also, number two, there's value. Consumers believe that there's a clear link between giving their personal information across and receiving better value for their hotel rooms and their hotel stay, and not just value, but personal experiences. Control. One of the principles of data protection is that we all own our own identity. We own who we are and what we are. So guests expect the ability to control their data and how long the hotel holds it for. A guest probably thinks that when they check into a hotel, the hotel will take their information, and when they check out, all the information goes. But that's not the case. The hotel holds onto the guest information before they arrive, during their stay, and for many, many months afterwards. So the guests want and need control over their own data. What happens for the hotels? The hotels have to meet regulatory challenges, and these change. That's why we don't use the word compliance, because compliance is just a fleeting moment in time. As soon as a technology vendor updates some software, changes some software, puts another device in, the compliance then disappears. The hotel wants to enable the use of the data for sales and marketing. That all has to come under the umbrella of data regulations. So, this is what I said at the outset, is that what we do is try and show the hotels, using the right data protection and data privileges, they can unlock the data to use to improve sales. And lastly, which is the one that shocks me the most, is that hotels don't realise that they hold the responsibility for all of the data that is held on their hotel. Most of the time, the hotel back office, we all know what a hotel back office looks like, and this will come onto a slide in a little while to do with the data technology iceberg, because most back offices will have servers from vendors, 10 or 15 different vendors. And even though all these vendors are the data processors, the hotel is the data controller, which manages all of that data. So in conclusion to that, yes, people are prepared to share their data and book with hotels, but they expect the hotel to be responsible for all of their data. Where hotels have to create the right conditions to share the data within the hotel for sales and marketing, but trust, the very first one at the top of the list is trust. The hotel has to trust, or the guest has to trust that the hotel is doing the right thing. So again, going through 2023, the hotel is looking for sales and marketing. What they want is cash in. And to enable the cash in, what they have to do is enable these databases. They have to be able to use the personal data to deliver personal services and to increase sales and attract new customers. So this is where we get onto my side of what we do in Hotel DPO, which is technology. And I'm just going to read some of this, that as we know, the last 3 years has seen an increase in technology like never seen before in hospitality. The increase in self-service, kiosks, hotel apps, digital QR codes for replacing menus. All of this has come in the last 3 years through the pandemic. And I think a lot of technology was created without even knowing whether the guests really want this technology. It's also given rise to technology companies advising hotels on how to use data with very little regard given to the data protection. And I can tell you some stories that I've been on some webinars where a well-known hotel marketing company is advising to hotels to use data that the guests inadvertently leave behind. Now, guests don't inadvertently leave any data behind. The hotels ask for it, the guests give it over in trust. So there should be no data inadvertently left behind. Any new technology that's introduced into a hotel, whether it be hardware or software, should be subject to updating a record of processing activities. The very first thing that hotels should be doing with their technology is having a data map. And a data map should show where the data sits, how long it sits there, what devices it's sat on, and what is the erasure process for getting rid of the data, whether that be automatic, whether that be manual. But a hotel, by law, has to have a record of processing activities. And Alan and I have done many projects over the years where the record of processing activities for the vendors is very, very difficult to achieve. So alongside legacy hotels, legacy technology, we all know that hotels like to keep technology going until it's falling apart and, you know, this technology stack falls over. So the legacy technology and new cloud technology have to work hand in hand, and the only way that they can work hand in hand is by data exchange. So again, point two there, that these data technology vendors are processing data on behalf of the hotel, but the hotel is the responsibility to safeguard the guest information. And hotels can take back the control by submitting a vendor data protection assessment. So I'm sure that we all work with hotels, you all work with hotels, and I'm sure that your experience, and I'd love to hear some feedback afterwards, is there any hotels that you work with that actually do vendor assessments? What we do at Hotel DPO, we've created a vendor assessment form which the vendors have to fill in and make sure they comply with their own data protection. So this is going back to the dangers of having data stored in technology. So where it says think of a hotel tech stack as a technology iceberg with only a few pieces visible above the water, example the PMS, all of the myriad of vendors and the data processor are unseen by the guests and largely not controlled by the hotel team directly. Again, from my experience installing and interfacing back office technology, so long as the systems sit there and work for the hotels and deliver the technology that the guests want, the hotels don't have access to these systems directly, and they don't day to day have access to running of these systems. And one thing that we can look at our PMS vendors, and all of them will quite happily list all of their technology partners. But to me, these are all the technology partners they're sharing the guest data with. And again, if you look at a list of, I think Oracle, their technology partner list runs to 90 pages. So these are all the technology vendors that Oracle are swapping data with. So this is my technology iceberg, and as you can see, oh, where is it? There it is. As you can see, this is how I look at hotel technology. You can see above the water where it's got your PMS, maybe an email system, a CRM, or a booking engine. That's all the hotel really deals with. The hidden data below the waterline, you can see all the technology, and there's just a few listed there, but that's just a handful. And that could go on and say Oracle, their interface partners run to 90 pages. So all of this is the hidden technology that hotels can't see and don't have direct access to. So without control of the technology, the hotels are putting without controlled technology, the hotels are putting themselves and the guests vulnerable of a data breach. As I put there are vendor webinars offering horror stories such as promoting the use of data guests inadvertently leave behind. And another one I heard recently is that if a guest orders a meal using a QR code and they order a vegetarian meal, then the hotel has got the profile to start bombarding that guest with offers of when new vegetarian dishes become available. This isn't what the guest signs up for. So this, you know, they must take control of the technology and they must know the risks. Just recently, just within the last few months, I'm sure you all heard that it wasn't even a data breach. It was marketing violation. They were fined 600,000 euros. Originally it was 200,000, and then they objected against it. And then the courts in France upped it from 200,000 to 600,000. So hotels have to be very careful about what they do with data and how they use it within marketing. As I said at the very beginning, there's two words that I don't often use, which is the four-letter word of GDPR and compliance. You know, compliance within hotels doesn't exist, and just one example of that is that there's a very well-known star rating, and part of their statutory obligations is that a hotel must have a fire safety certificate, they must have a liquor license, and they must be GDPR compliant. And we're in discussion to discover how they rate GDPR compliance, because it doesn't exist, and therefore maybe some of their star ratings are questionable. So, but we'll see. So I'm coming to the end of this, just a couple more slides now, and what the three takeaways that I'd like you to take away from this is that guests are making a data share, don't share decision on a booking by booking basis. That means that when a guest goes to a hotel website, one of the things that we talk to hotels about is their privacy policy. And a lot of people fall down a rabbit hole of YouTube or TikTok once they start watching videos. I fall down a rabbit hole of looking at guest or looking at hotel websites and looking at the privacy notice. And if anybody wants a follow-up call after this, I can share some privacy notices from hotels that a lawyer wouldn't understand. So guests need to understand that hotels are taking care of their data. Trust, number two there, trust is a leading consideration when deciding whether to share personal information. You know, we all stay in hotels, we'll go to hotels. I have to stop myself on checking out of a hotel, asking to submit a data subject access request, where the hotel by law should be giving me a list of all of the data they hold on me, because it's going to add to the burden of what they have. We've not come across a hotel yet that has all of their data protection readiness in line. And it says there, are you risk of being instead of a data controller, hotels are at risk of being a data out of control. So just the last two things to go is that using personal data in 2023, hotels need a strategy to be able to use personal data. They need to access all the silos of information that they have stored. Hotels store so much data is that even a guest walking through a lobby of a hotel is exchanging data with their Wi-Fi network. They're exchanging their mobile phone information with the wireless network. So even without knowing it, a guest will generate several hundred pieces of data a day within a hotel. So they need to take control of the technology and make sure that the technology, says there, the technology tail doesn't wag the dog. The hotels need to take back control of all of their data. And this is the last thing that I'll talk about. This is something that Alan and I are working on very, very closely. We're part of a BSI working group to create a supply chain into companies that are taking up ISO 31030. Now, ISO 31030 was introduced in 2021 as a travel risk management framework, which is not yet certifiable, but it's been working towards being certified. And what we're working with the BSI to create supply chain framework of companies that want to supply into companies that are using the ISO 31030. So travel risk is the #1 consideration at the moment for travel managers. Data protection is the only threat to travellers before the guest arrives, during their stay, and after they leave. Travellers themselves are becoming more aware of what their digital rights are and what they're allowed to, what they are giving to the hotels. And what I have always said all along is that data protection will be driven by the guests, not by the hotels. Hotels don't want data protection. As we all know, it's been 5 years now, and most hotels will always wait for a test case. Well, the test cases have been and gone, yet still pretty much most of them will bury their heads in the sand and ignore data protection regulations that are in place. So there is a big sea change coming. There's big companies in London that one company we're working with in 2019 booked 250,000 room nights, and they're looking at ISO 31030. So there's some big changes coming along, and hotels need to consider what this ISO will do for them, and to be part of a hotel program within these corporates, they're going to have to comply with the new BSI that's coming along. So if anybody would like to talk any more about data protection, this isn't a big sales pitch to anybody. Data protection is a passion for me. It's showing that the guests and consumers own their own data. And as I say, I've been working in hotels for 40 years, and I love hospitality, I love hotels, and I want to be able to help hotels comply, if they can, with, with these regulations. So if you've got any questions, I'd love to answer some, and apologies for my phone ringing in the background. And that's your lot. Excuse me a second.
Thank you for that, Rob. Has anybody got any questions, any comments?
I think that in actual fact, hotels are requesting too much information, and that's probably the biggest problem. If they would cut down on the amount of information that they request from guests, maybe there wouldn't be the same issue.
Yes, I mean there is that. I think there's a fine balance between having the information to deliver a personal service and deliver the contract that they are obliged to deliver. I mean, if you look at some of the special category data that the hotels often store, which is health. If a hotel's got a spa, they're collecting information about somebody's health, or they're collecting information about dietary. This is all special category, and that also has to be handled very, very carefully. So what we're trying to do is make data protection an enabler and not something that restricts what hotels do. Because at some time, at some point, you know, somebody's going to come along and ask for something, and then a hotel has to deliver it.
What, Rob, what would happen if, I mean, these days most companies have like a POS system and all the rest of it. Well, what would happen if somehow somebody hacked the central PMS system, as it were, and got hold of your hotel's data? Yep. Who would be responsible?
The hotel.
Even though it's on the PMS sort of site, and it's up to them to keep the security involved.
The hotel is the data controller, and we've looked at contracts between the technology companies and the hotels. The hotels, and I don't say the hotels don't have the knowledge of what's going on behind, but when I look at that technology iceberg, so long as a PMS system delivers a check-in, unless the hotel's got the legal legal background to look at a contract, we're looking at contracts that are 35, 40 pages long. So the hotels are beholden to the technology companies. The technology companies are the processors, but the hotels are the data controllers. So it's like when the Ritz Hotel in London, everyone knows about the Ritz Hotel in London. Somehow somebody hacked into the, I don't know if it's the PMS or the POS system, and got the list of names of everybody that was having afternoon tea. Again, it's the hotel's responsibility. So the hotels don't realise, again, unless you go along with a big stick and say, you are responsible. Now, this unfortunately, I could talk for hours because it's very complex. The other side of that, if a group is booked into a hotel, the group booking agent becomes the data controller and the hotel becomes the data processor. So this is the tip of that technology iceberg. You know, we could go on for several hours, and I apologise that this is something that I've spent a lot of time. And I say my business partner Alan is the one that will tell you more about the regulations. But there's also something called PECA, the Privacy Electronic Communication Regulations. So PECA covers also marketing. So PECR and the GDPR, the two four-letter words, are the two regulations, the laws that govern how you can use data. So, you know, we have a product called, which is a sales and marketing box, and Alan would talk more about the sales and marketing on discovering new guests, attracting old guests, and it's a four-sided box, but the lid and the base of this box are the privacy regulations, and sales and marketing has to fall within these four sides of privacy and control of data. So I'd welcome anybody to put me in touch with a hotel where they've got all of their ducks in a row. Doesn't exist as far as I'm concerned. It doesn't exist as far as I've seen. So, you know, just simply the data map and record of processing activities, which are the two things that a hotel must have by law, which shows where the data is, what they collect, how long it's stored for, how it's deleted, the media that it's stored on. Doesn't exist. But hotels, we've all worked in hotels, you know, with hotels for such a long time. We know that it's not their priority, and I understand that. You know, they're attracting guests. So, but if anybody would like a follow-up and learn more about what we can do, and say, I know our time is limited, and I apologise, I've gone on for longer than I expected to, but if anybody would like to hear any more, and again, it's not a sales pitch to anybody here, but if anybody would like to know more about how to unlock data silos within hotels, please drop me a line.
Indeed. Thank you, Rob.
Thank you, everybody, for listening.
As I said, one of those subjects that not very many people actually know much about, and yet can have such an impact on the business if things go wrong.
It can have a big positive impact as well if it goes right.
Mm-hmm.
So,
okay,
good. Thanks for inviting me along.
Thank you. Right. Well, anybody else got anything to add? Roy, I see you managed to join on a bit later. If not, I think
I was just going to say, Robin, actually, everything that Rob said, if it goes well, it goes brilliantly. But if it goes wrong and you don't have cyber insurance in place, it can escalate massively into the tens of millions of pounds in damages.
Yeah,
and I know everyone hates cyber insurance in hospitality. They think it's pointless. It's a big spend. But on the other hand, if you don't have it and something does go wrong, it's catastrophic.
Yep. And it's managing what you have. It's not just managing. Say cyber insurance is definitely one thing. But it's having the processes and principles in place to manage what you have. I mean, if you minimise what you store and how long you store it for and what you have, you minimise the risk as well. And again, a lot of insurance companies do require or are looking at cyber insurance now.
I was just going to say the market's getting tough for cyber insurance. If you haven't got the risk management and controls in place in the background, chances are they won't sell it to you. No. I don't encourage everybody to look at the ISO 31030 as well, because that is going to be a massive impact on the supply chain into these corporates in the future. I mean, it's growing, and it's growing rapidly across Europe and North America as well. So I'd encourage everybody just to look at a little bit more about the ISO 31030 and look at the supply chain into those companies, because it will affect hotels, not just hotels, airlines, ground transportation, anything where a corporate is booking hotels or booking a traveller. It's all going to affect that.
So Rob, quick question if I may then. If I own a hotel that is now under franchise arrangement with, say, Marriott, and they foisted the Master system upon me, and there's an IT director at corporate, where does that responsibility lie as to who controls what and who's going to point the blame?
Joint controllers. There's a thing called joint. There is a joint controller. So yes. if a hotel has to follow brand standards, I think brand standards go as far as the PMS. Anything from PMS backwards, I think the hotels can choose themselves. Yeah. If they're following a brand standard, then they become joint controllers. So the hotels, the franchise and the brand are both responsible.
Okay, that's interesting. Yeah, because I think the managers will assume that the IT director somewhere else is now in charge of that and do the best to wash their hands of it, I think. But
no. If it's brand standards, they're joint controllers.
Interesting.
But,
thank you.
Good. Well, I'd love to hear if anybody wants a follow-up. I'd love to hear your experience with data protection in hotels as well. So thank you, Robin.
Thank you.
Just one last thing. Is the new BSI 30 or whatever it's called, is that something that's going to impact on hotels' costs?
Insurance-wise, it would.
The BSI is the ISO 31030 is not certified yet, but they're going to get certification in the next 12 months. The BSI will come out in the next 18 months, and it will affect costs if they have to comply with standards they don't have in place at the moment. Alan and I are talking, of course, about data protection, and data protection does cost. You know, we have systems, we have software in place, we have systems in place, we have audits in place. So the BSI auditors will look at certain features within hotels. There's certain things that we do a hotel assessment, so we can ask a dozen questions, or even looking at as I say, a policy notice, a privacy notice on a hotel website. We can tell really by the privacy notice on how much emphasis they put on data protection. So yes, it will cost them to be part of that BSI, but that's, as I say, that's maybe 18 months away.
Yeah, you've got a note there of 2023, Rob. Is it 1st of January 2023, or is there a date within the year?
For what? Sorry. For
the changes coming on your slides.
No, it's really 2023. Looking forward to how hotels can use data. It's not the ISO and the BSI are probably 2024, but what we're looking forward, we don't want to look back at data protection over the last 5 years. We're looking forward at how hotels can unlock now the data they've got, because it's changed from May 2018 to now. There's been so many changes within technology and regulations that whatever hotel did in 2018 doesn't work in 2023.
Yeah, I'm involved in a charity that does accommodation in Aviemore, and they're just changing their booking procedures, so they want to port or import all the details from the previous one. So I guess that's a problem as well.
Yeah, well, that should come with a DPI, a data process impact assessment.
Yeah,
and all of the data subjects, guests, we're all data subjects. All of the guests should be notified that the data is going from one system to another, because when the guests or when the travellers gave their permission for the data to be used, that doesn't mean it's never ending. That you have to reapply for permission every few months. So even if a guest says, yes, you can use my data for marketing, that permission is never ending. It doesn't mean it's never ending. You have to reapply for it. As if you're moving data from one system to another, you have to inform the data subjects that their data is now being held on a different system.
Sure. Okay.
But that's
I think
not part of the
I'll
DPIA.
phone you. I'll phone you about that, and I think I need to
Absolutely.
talk to
Yeah,
you.
yeah,
Okay.
absolutely. Happy to have a chat. That'd be great.
Okay.
So,
Okay. Right.
good.
Well, I think we'll call it a day today. Thank you for joining me for the half centenary.
Yeah, well done.
And we'll meet again next month, hopefully.
Definitely.
Have a good day, everybody.
Have a good
Okay.
one.
Nice to
Bye
meet you all. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.